I like Metroid. Like, I really like Metroid, more than I probably should for anything. I may not have been a longtime fan, but the first time I saw this Queen in Super Smash Bros. 64, I wanted to learn more. And I was satiated when I discovered the internet in the mid-2000s with fan games, learning about YouTube channels talking about Metroid in the early 2010s, and finally getting a disintegrated brick around my 17th birthday. I was finally able to hook myself with Samus Aran's journey overcoming alien and federational threats. And hey, with a new game out for a while, I got another chance to gush about this overshadowed masterpiece of a franchise. Also gives me a reason to make a better video. Good grief, what the hell was I writing back then? Metroid was created by the very influential Gunpei Yokoi, the father of the Ultra Hand, the Game Boy, and the Virtual Boy. Okay, I never said he always made gold. He was teamed up with Satoru Okada, who also helped make the Game Boy and future handhelds, Hiroji Kiyotake, the creator of Wario, that's a weird pull, and last but certainly not least, Yoshio Sakamoto, who designed the characters including the protagonist Samus Aran, a galactic bounty hunter tasked by the Federation to stop the space pirates. I mean, think about how interesting of an idea this was. The main inspiration for the series was Alien, and a lot of people loved that movie. People were in love with science fiction films at the time. Must I tell you why Star Wars was a huge success? I feel like the creators knew that this would have as much of an appeal. Not as much, mind you. The video games weren't as profitable as movies in the mid-1980s. And the NES was more children's entertainment. Not to say that there weren't some mature titles back then, but it just didn't fit the demographic as well as the more colorful games on display. And I think that's why, compared to Nintendo's other franchises, Mario and Legend of Zelda, it wasn't as big of a hit. Not a failure by any means, but it certainly didn't make as much of a splash. The word Metroid apparently comes from the two words Metro and Android, neither of which means anything in the game as far as I'm concerned. Metroid in the game, though, translates to Ultimate Warrior, which does fit Samus as a character at the very least. But it's also the name of these energy-leeching, floating jellyfish that were stolen by the space pirates. Well, they stole one of them and cloned it, but they wanted to use it as a bioweapon to take over the galaxy. Nevertheless, let's talk about Metroid for the NES. You know, I kind of realized that Nintendo had two different types of games. Arcade experience like Mario, Duck Hunt, and the 3 million sports games they developed, and non-linear adventures like Zelda, Star Tropics, and Metroid. Though instead of playing in an overworld, Metroid is similar to Mario, as it's a 2D side-scroller. Unlike Mario, like I said before, it's very non-linear. You aren't given a straightforward goal outside of beating Mother Brain as well as her two henchmen, Kraid and Ridley. And in order to beat them, you need to explore and increase your overall mobility. Missiles, energy tanks, and the Morph Ball are your most important tools to help navigate through Plant Zevis. But you'll also find the Various Suit, Morph Bombs, High Jump Boots, Ice Beam, Wave Beam, and the ever-reliable Screw Attack. The idea of exploring an extensive world and being rewarded for your curiosity with offensive and defensive upgrades is a very exciting one. And apparently I'm not alone. The idea was so good it even created a subgenre of its own, the search action genre. Metroidvania was the original title card, with Metroid and Castlevania being the originators of the concept. But considering there are thousands of other games with this format, as well as the fact that Metroid and Castlevania have not been the most relevant franchises as of late, search action slowly became normalized. And to be fair, I kinda like the name. It's clear and to the point. Unlike the original Metroid. I said that I loved the concept, but this is a Nintendo game, and it do be jank. Without the Various Suit and Screw Attack, you may as well be wishing on a shooting star. Some of these enemies will throw you around like a ragdoll half the time. Some of them will even enter the doorway while you're completely vulnerable. And some of them will just come out of the other end and kill you because you had a rough time getting there. Oh, and if you do die despite getting those lovely energy tanks that increase your health, you will come back with a meager 30 points. And you're going to have a tough time getting more back because item pickups from enemies are random and there's no other way to refill. Aside from energy tanks. I heavily recommend a map so you can make your journey as safe as possible, and I did that for my entire playthrough, and it was smooth sailing. Until I got to Kraid. He hits like a tank and he's mostly invulnerable with those spikes in front of him. Even with 6 tanks I was gasping for energy. Luckily there's a tank in his room to refill. I won't get a 7th bar, but I'll take it. Ridley is a far cry in comparison. I always take him out first, since he won't spew any more fireballs if you freeze the ones he lets out.
Or they just won't reach you if you stand right next to him.
It's kind of pathetic. Though neither of them are compared to Mother Brain. It doesn't help that the Metroids you fight before her take a lot of missiles, and you need those missiles for those barriers, which heal up if you don't punch them up quickly. And finally herself. And all this while trying to evade the turrets and rinkas, yes they're called rinkas, and to top it off, you need to avoid the lava down below. Good luck with that, Samus has the worst case of slippery feet I've ever seen in a video game. Every time I play this game, I almost never finish it thanks to this fight. It's even worse when the countdown sequence isn't even harder. It's tense, but you got so much time, you don't need to worry about it. Despite all that garbage, I still have a soft spot for this game. It's rough in places, but it still has a special charm that, again, created a fan-favorite style of video games. Also, that soundtrack. Brinstar and Chrysler alone make the adventure much more exciting. I could listen to these songs for hours. Speaking of time, Metroid is one of those games that actually has a few different endings depending on how fast you complete it. This was apparently a talking point, the fact that Samus Aran was secretly a woman. It's empowering, I suppose, but Samus wasn't really the first female protagonist, not by a long shot. In fact, this wasn't even the first game to do that twist. That went to Baraduke by Namco. The character in question, Toby, was portrayed as a man until the ending. I highly doubt most people remember that game anyway. It only gets referenced in Mr. Driller nowadays since Toby is the main character's mother. But Samus became more recognizable over time, I suppose. Probably because the series actually continued, unlike Baraduke. But I guess that's beside the point.
And while not as successful as its two other Nintendo counterparts, Metroid did sell pretty well, so a sequel was in order. And they got Metroid 2 for the Game Boy.
You know, I have to be honest, having a sequel on inferior hardware is a weird move. You'd think they'd want to put all their resources on the Super Nintendo, since the game came out a year after it released. But considering how the story was going to be structured, having it work as a handheld title may have been the best choice. After the events of Metroid, the Federation learned about the Metroid's home planet, SR-388, and sent a cavalry of troops to eliminate them. Well, what the hell do you think happened? They disappeared, so the Federation tasked Samus, the lone bounty hunter, to take care of the Metroids herself, and to find the troops, which she never really does. This should be a smooth ride with the incredible moveset from the last game. Well, no, you don't have all your tools aside from a few missiles and your morph ball. Even your bombs and Varia suit are gone, which I would only assume she'd want to keep. Well, at least you can crouch and aim down. That's a good consolation, right? Well, you'll get them all back in due time, plus a few new tools. The Spider Ball, the Spring Ball, and the Space Jump. Spider Ball allows you to stick onto walls, which is great for the beginning of the game, though it is cumbersome to tap down 3 separate times. And bombs cause you to exit the Spider Ball mode entirely. This is the only 2D game to use the Spider Ball, and really, it's fun for exploration, but it's ultimately kind of pointless once you get to the Space Jump. Unlike the Spider Ball, this would be a staple onward, and it's great when you get the rhythm and just break the level design in half, even though it's a little wacky to control here. The Spring Jump is another staple, though later on it'd be bundled with other power-ups. However, it's guarded by the only non-Metroid boss, Arachnus. He just jumps. He's weak to bombs. Yeah, he's just weak. The rest of the things you will fight alongside the random inhabitants is the Metroids themselves. Yeah, if you haven't gotten alien vibes yet, here you go. This is some H.R. Geiger shit right here, at least as much as they can get away with on the Game Boy. Creepy on paper, but after the first encounter, you'll be taking out the same things over and over. Take out the next phase over and over. Fight a couple of the next phase, kiss my ass, jackass, fight a random alpha off the beaten path, fight the next stage a few times, and then fight a few larvae until beating down the queen by going through its stomach and plastering it with bombs. She's gonna blow, blow, blow. 50 Metroids in total, with almost no other variations and very little variety. Yeah, the stupid little Zeta Metroids are faster than Alphas and Betas, but there's still similar fights, and you're still pumping them with missiles. It's repetitive. And it's boring. And if you were playing this game on original hardware, you'd also be watching this on an ugly green screen, making the repetitive slog a sickening one as well. Luckily, I was playing this on the Super Game Boy where I can do this. Why the hell can you paint over the game screen? After beating the Queen Metroid, you discover a little egg. Nah, don't worry, it's not a facehugger. That's probably for Metroid Prime 4 instead. No, it was a baby Metroid, and which Samus spares and allows to follow her to her ship. I'm sure back then this made no sense, and ultimately, it didn't. Even in the beginning of Super Metroid, where she recalls the events of 1 and 2, she just talks about the hatchling following her. There is a bit of somberness to it, though, with the score. Metroid 2 doesn't have as good of a soundtrack as the original. I mean, I like the main theme a lot, and the ending theme is great, but the rest of it is just ambience. And because it's a Game Boy game, it's not good ambience. Aside from this moment, it hits the emotion pretty well. This leads us to what many consider the Magnum Opus, though. Think of another title screen as ominous as this. The baby Metroid screaming in the glass tank inside the dark room with bodies covering the floor. All of it topped with the title theme of the series at its eeriest, and not even followed by the more calming part of the theme from the original game. It's just chilling. And once you get to the file select, not only do you get 3 separate save files, pretty typical for a Super Nintendo game, but then custom controls. Just there if you wish. I mean, you can't put the shoulder button commands on the face buttons, but that's a minor nitpick. Speaking of which, am I the only person that puts the run button on the left shoulder button? Sure, I won't be able to aim diagonally down or use that new crystal flash, but it's
Not like they were used to me personally.
so I'll just use it as the run button. It feels better for me anyway. And starting up the game, we get to see Samus reminisce about the past events of 1 and 2, leaving the baby Metroid to the Federation scientists and leaving to go find another bounty. All with the amazing theme of Samus Aran playing through the scene, one of my favorite music pieces in gaming as a whole. Then, it follows up with a distress call from the very space station she trusted with the baby Metroid. Coming into the main room, not only is the baby missing, but the scientists are lying on the ground, covered in blood. This is the first 5 minutes of a Nintendo-developed game, the same company that tried to keep their image as family-friendly as possible in the NES days. And you see freaking blood in that time frame. Sakamoto went freaking crazy around this time, apparently. Well, this attack was caused by the resurrected Ridley, a topic we'll have to save for another day, where he steals the Metroid and causes the space station to self-destruct. And that tone is carried over to the returning Zebus, going back to the demolished Turian, getting the Morph Ball since you don't have any of your abilities again. Oh, I feel we're not alone here. And look at that, Space Pirates! First time we see these bastards, and chronologically the last. And when you get the bombs, the Chozo statue turns hostile and you gotta fight it in order to escape. This game is filled with twists and turns that make it a 90s masterpiece. The atmosphere is beyond stellar, with catchy yet atmospheric tunes. The scenery is sometimes luscious, eerie, or intense depending on what the moment needs. And the creatures you fight are weird monstrosities that are just there to get into your way. Some of them work for the space pirates, but most of them are just attacking you for invading their space. Well, sorry Bucko, I need those super missiles. It's a wild ride throughout the course of the game, almost as if Sakamoto was trying to create a silent story in the form of a video game. Fun fact, Yokoi was actually getting angrier day by day when the team were working a crazy amount of overtime, to a point where he actually came in and asked if they were making art or something. In his defense, they were getting past their deadline, but the team got the last laugh once the game was finished. Yokoi was hooked on the game, even comparing the game when other action game devs pitched their ideas, and telling them to play Super Metroid instead. Though nowadays, some will disagree with the notion of the game being such a masterpiece. I don't think anyone will deny the game is breathtaking in its environmental storytelling and its fantastic sense of ambience, but the contention definitely comes from the gameplay. The big one being the verticality. Jumping seems to be troubling to many people, and I'm not gonna say I don't understand where they're coming from. The floaty jump can be a bit awkward, but trust me, as someone who had a similar criticism from their first playthrough, I was able to understand and take advantage of Samus' lack of weight. And with the run button, I feel it gives you a lot more control and lets you do some crazy tricks and skips. Same with the new wall jump. Yes, the timing is pretty hard to grasp, but once you get the hang of it, you can allow yourself to get to places otherwise inaccessible. Also, Pete's using the new grapple beam. This thing kinda sucks, especially when you're trying to swing the damn thing. But I'll still take it over the X-ray scope. This is still the most useless tool in this series, and they never brought it back for good reason. Oh, going back to the wall jump, as wacky as it can be, I feel like it's one of the best inclusions for the franchise, and how they decided to learn it was pretty clever. You actually have the ability from the start, but you don't know that until you meet the Edecuns, well they'll show you how to perform the technique. The same thing happens with the new Shine Spark, though you need the new Speed Booster in order to perform it. Both the Speed Booster and Shine Spark are wonderful additions as well. Who wouldn't want to blaze through the world like a crazed bullet train and then zoom into the sky? Sure, you take some damage from the Shine Spark, but hey, it's cool and it helps with completion. Funny thing about that actually, this would be the first time where Metroid games start to streamline the completion criteria, meaning that every item you collect, even the required ones, would total up to 100. Not that there's much reason to get 100% aside from the lovely serotonin and being able to take out threats without worrying too much. Though the new items introduced in this game is way more extensive than the last two by a mile. I already talked about the grapple beam, the speed booster, and, well, this. But you also have the returning ice, waves, phaser, and plasma beams, which can be stacked this time, thank God. Well, you can't stack the phaser and plasma beam without pulling up a glitch, but that's fine. And you also have the charge beam, wonderful to have especially for a missile substitute. And you can use it as a weaker version of the screw attack, though it's not as useful for me personally. Speaking of missiles, they return alongside the stronger super missiles. I prefer in later games when they're just a simple upgrade instead of a separate option, but I'm not going to complain. Plus, having it be a separate item makes getting them early much more rewarding. Though in order to get them early, you need to take advantage of a specific trick known as the Mach Ball. A bit tricky to pull off, but you'll be able to have top speed while being half the size, allowing you to pass through these gates. I mean, it's not an intentional part of the game, but it makes the exploration a lot more fun in my opinion, making an already non-linear game much more open. Plus, who doesn't want to get something as useful as super missiles and reserve tanks early? Reserve tanks are what they sound like. If you run out of energy, you'll be refilled by energy stored into the reserve tanks. As useful as they sound, I can understand why they never brought them back after Super. The game is pretty easy without them. But the last of the new consumables is the power bombs. Honestly, they're pretty useless on their own, if I'm being completely honest. They're not exactly helpful for bosses, and they have little impact for exploration. Makes it weird when bomb jumping is more exciting than a devastating blast of destruction. Also, speaking of which, bomb jumping is freaking awesome. You can get a lot of stuff early with this. There are two cool, though pretty superfluous techniques that you can pull off with power bombs, and combine them with other tools. You have the special charge beam attacks, which are pathetic attacks that I swear only exist because they're so pretty. And the other technique being the Crystal Flash, which is the most convoluted set of steps for anything I've ever played.
But put in the steps and voila!
A pretty light show that will restore all of your health. Yeah, there's a reason both of these techniques aren't very well known. They're really confusing to pull off, not very helpful, and you have so much of an advantage already that it just feels like overkill. You also find the Varia suit as well as the new Gravity suit that will improve your defensive abilities, making the Crystal Flash way more unneeded, which is probably why they never brought it back since. And again, the game is pretty easy as it is, and none of that is said better than its boss fights. I won't lie and say the bosses are fantastic. Some of them are brain dead like Dragoon and Phantoon, but what makes them interesting is how they were made. Many of them have alternate ways of defeating them, like how you can use electricity to fry Dragon to death, or how you can kill Phantoon quicker without the ice beam. And you were waiting for this, Crocomire, where you have to play a game of tug of war and push him into the acid before he pushes you into the spiky wall of death. I'm pretty sure one of us has the worst punishments. I think someone was on some acid when they came up with this. I do like the ending, that's kinda fun. Oh, almost forgot. Even the returning bosses from Metroid NES were a bit more subversive. Especially Ridley, he's more of a bastard this time. And when you meet Kraid for the first time, hell, it's not really that much different from the original fight, except way easier, mind you. Oh, that wasn't Kraid. Nope, he's a giant hulking beast with boomerang nails and multiple eyes that are wonderful targets for a missile or two. But the most subversive part was definitely the game's ending with Mother Brain and the Metroids. I'm sure you didn't forget the baby Metroid. Well, that Metroid was cloned by the space pirates, and the baby itself became a beefy boy. And it also tries to kill you. But then it suddenly remembers who you are, and it floats away in embarrassment. At least there were energy refills a couple of rooms ahead. And then you had the new Turian, and it's certainly a new Turian. At least Mother Brain is easier to take out. And once you take out Mother Brain, oh, it ain't over. You get the surprise second phase where she becomes a tyrannical freak of nature and slams you hard with a beam of seizure-inducing death. You think it's over, and then the baby Metroid comes out of nowhere and says, "The f*** are you doing to my mother, you bitch?" And heals us up, which I guess is something Metroids can do. Would have been nice a few minutes ago. And then Mother Brain kills the poor little thing, in which the ashes of the Metroid allow Samus to kill Mother Brain with her own fucking weapon. Oh man, this scene is so good! Never fails to give me so much joy. And then the self-destruct sequence happens, what else is new? And you can destroy the space pirates with the new Hyper Beam, and save the animals while you're at it if you have a soul, and leave Samus' previous home to collapse into nothing. More on that with Zero Mission, but yeah, Zebes was Samus' home planet alongside the Chozo. You know these bird statues from across the games? They were designed after the Chozo, and the tools these statues contain were made by them as well. but we'll get a chance to talk about that later. Aside from that, oh, this game is always a blast to come back to. I know it isn't everyone's cup of tea, but damn it, give me a whole gallon of that stuff. This is one of my favorite games for a multitude of reasons. The atmosphere, the storytelling, Samus' overall mobility, the boss designs, the satisfaction of going off the beaten path and being rewarded for your efforts. It's just such a good game, man, and I implore you to try it at least once in your life. It's on the Nintendo Switch Online. $20. Go on. The whole service is worth it for that alone.
Now, this is where things get a little interesting, since Super Metroid was actually supposed to be the series finale, which is why they kind of stopped making things for a few years.
There was a 3D game planned for the Nintendo 64, but since the team couldn't come up with any ideas, and the controller being a little on the bad side, the idea had to be tossed. Sakamoto also approached a different team to come up with the title, but they turned it down, worried that they wouldn't be able to make a title as well crafted as Super Metroid, which Sakamoto took as a compliment, as he should. But in November 2002, a 3D game would later come into fruition on the GameCube thanks to the new Retro Studios, titled Metroid Prime. That's a topic we'll have to talk about another day, but a day earlier, Nintendo themselves would make a follow-up to Super Metroid. There were some E3 coverage for Metroid 4 in 2001, but oh boy, it was weird. Take a look for yourself. Samus is pitch black, there was apparently anti-gravity mechanics. It looked kinda bad, but they went back on it thanks to negative feedback. Later on, advertisements hit for the newly named Metroid Fusion, and damn, you got a glimpse of what Nintendo had in store. Sometimes the only way to defeat a predator is to become one. A chilling thought, and the TV commercials hit even harder, with you having to face what seems to be yourself. Super may have nailed the atmosphere, but Fusion was going farther with the horror elements, and I would have been all for it as a kid. Shame I never got the chance, but I'm also glad this is my true introduction to the series thanks to that 3DS. So how does it work out? Ain't that a way to start? Samus goes back to SR-388 with a few biology scientists from the Federation, and they learn of a new organism, later known as the X parasite. These gelatinous beings have the ability to absorb a target and completely copy their physical form as well as their mental capabilities and memories. Well, the X that tries to absorb Samus succeeds in reaching her nervous system, causing her to crash into an asteroid belt. Thankfully, Samus was ejected before impact, and the scientists were able to retrieve her, as well as surgically removing the power suit that is apparently organic. Well, that explains the suit, but what about the X that, is slowly killing her? Well, thanks to the cells of the baby Metroid, they were used as a vaccine to kill the X, harming her body. That's not how vaccines work, and I'm pretty sure vaccines do not change your genetic makeup, since the vaccine makes Samus part Metroid now. Did Metroid Fusion predict CRISPR? Oh, no wait, the first instance of that tech was 1987. Wait a minute. Okay, well, Samus is part Metroid now, I suppose. And after this miracle, Samus goes over to the biological space lab after learning of an explosion happening during the shipment of creatures and her X-infected power suit. I see something bad happening. Thankfully, that vaccine will protect you from the X themselves, but the scientists inside the station, well, chances of survival are next to zero there. And yeah, you learn that the scientists are all but dead thanks to her new ship AI, which Samus personally calls Adam, named after her commanding officer, back when she was working for the Federation. She tends to monologue during these elevator segments, which, let me remind you, the only time Samus has ever talked was in the beginning of Super Metroid, which was just a recap of the previous games to keep the player informed. Here she is talking to herself, possibly to keep herself occupied while going through these slow-moving shafts. It gives you a small glimpse of Samus' character, a very meticulous woman who only thinks when the action is slowed down, and only speaks when she needs to. Fusion feels more like a character study rather than a traditional Metroid game, and that isn't made more clear than with the SAX. Yep, remember when I talked about the power suit being organic? And how the X can copy the host they infect? Well, the X that was infecting the power suit has the same abilities as a fully equipped Super Metroid version of Samus Aran. And unlike Samus, this thing doesn't have a personality. It's a cold-blooded murderer with no remorse and certainly no morality. And once Adam discovers it, he tells you as clear as he can. If you see it, just run. This thing has your ice beam, and considering the Metroid's weakness to cold, you will be in critical danger. and the game will make sure you know that for the first couple of encounters. The darkened rooms, the footsteps of the SAX, the infectious heartbeat, and in the second encounter, the identity thief will use the power bomb to destroy a wall and even hurt you in the process. Though I expected a little more than 30 units, I know the suit is weak, but I guess not as weak as we thought. Meaning I can take the hits! Yeah, the more I play this game, the more I can take the piss from it. And dude, this thing is dumb as rocks. You can tell it took the DNA from the suit and not the bounty hunter herself. That's nice to know. But yeah, you may not be as strong as you were before the Jello Bath, but you will recover in no time, mostly thanks to the Federation allowing you to download some of your old tools. As weird as that sounds. How do you download the ability to shoot missiles? And some of the X-Parasites have your beam abilities, one of them being achieved by one of the infected scientists trying to destroy the space station.
Pretty freaking weird.
As well as your trusty Morph Ball, High Jump, Speed Booster, Space Jump, and the ever-reliable Screw Attack, which you get from the Ridley Corpse the Federation had in a freezer for some reason. Why did they think this was a good idea? New items are a thing this time, though they're kind of minuscule.
Why is the Spacer Beam called the Wide Beam here? That is such a downgrade of a name. Spacer is such a badass name for any weapon, man, and Wide Beam just sounds lame in comparison. Also, it doesn't help that we already have the Wave Beam, which sounds extremely similar to it. I don't like this change. Speaking of which, though,
instead of having an Ice Beam because, you know, the Federation will upgrade your missiles to have freezing capabilities. Not a big change, just a superfluous one. The diffusion missiles are neat. Gives your missiles a pseudo screen nuke effect, and since you had the ice missiles, will also give you a freezing effect along with it. Missiles were streamlined a bit overall though, since super missiles are just an upgrade. So all you need to worry about is missiles, energy, and power bomb takes in terms of collectibles. I love how you can tell what items you've gotten, making it way smoother for 100%. And if you beat the game, you'll actually get a marker if you get every single item of that type in that area. As for getting the items, oh boy. Well, that's mostly a problem with the level design as a whole. It's simple for the most part, and with the heavier weight, it makes getting some of these things with either the speed booster, shine spark, or aiming with the diffusion missiles a bit awkward. You can shine spark on an incline to keep the speed boost going, and you can space jump with the speed boost to get a couple of those interesting puzzles. Oh, and there are also a couple of times where you're going to need the hidden platforms when you use a bomb or a wave beam, and no, I don't like this. Especially when you need to shoot at a specific spot to make sure you can do a super strict speed boost to get your 18th energy tank. Yeah, the puzzles in this game are a little mind-breaking, and they can tend to be for a little reward, like getting another power bomb. And the reason I say that is because you get 32 power bomb extensions, leading to your maximum bomb capacity to 74. Why do you need that many power bombs? They're not useful in boss fights. I guess it's good for attracting X if you're in a pinch, but the most you'll get out of them is to find bombable walls for missiles and power bomb extensions. Oh, and to make it a little more annoying, you can't bomb those hidden blocks. The game does this a couple of times, and it's obnoxious. So I talked briefly about Fusion being less like a traditional Metroid game, and that's mostly with its pacing. The game is the most linear the series has ever been, with no room to explore. I mean, in terms of the story, it forces you to keep yourself from point A to point B, not only keeping yourself from the SAX, but also because of other reasons. Adam only tells you to go to a specific point, and will not even allow you to open any hatch doors unless necessary. And of course, the X tend to be the ones that keep you from moving on as well. And the fact that they take the form of creatures being studied in the station
does make them appear more as a threat.
The return of Arachnus, a jumping creature that looks exactly what you think it looks, and a spider with a damaged eye literally called Yakuza. I always knew spiders were the critter version of the Mafia. There were also organic machines that were affected, like Box, screw that thing, especially in the second fight, and Nightmare. Oh Lord, Nightmare. What the hell is this thing? You take out its armor and then boom, you get this slowly melting glob of flesh floating in the sky, asking for its existence to end. The Federation made a monster! And that's not all they're making. You remember the Metroid DNA from the beginning? Well, they weren't holding on that for an emergency cure, obviously. They were making Metroids. And Adam knew this, keeping the breeding program a secret. Don't worry, it's all for peaceful applications, obviously. That's why they try to exterminate them in SR-388. They also have an interest in the X and the SAX. Possibly for peaceful applications as well, I'm sure. This is where Samus starts speaking her mind, unlike the idiots that are coming over to collect. And while Adam takes this as a threat to the Federation's plans, locking Samus up until they arrive, Samus finally convinced the AI by calling it Adam by name, causing a reaction. Apparently the AI was Adam, possibly having his mind uploaded after his death. He was considered to be a perfect military mind according to Samus, but I don't know, preserving his mind as computer software seems a little disrespectful, but maybe he wanted it that way, who knows. But he gives us our final mission, crash the B.S.L into SR-388 before the Federation arrives. We get obstructed by one of the SAX that morph into an amalgamation of the power suit and the creature from the beginning. That's creepy. And once the classic self-destruct sequence starts, feels good to start one for once. And you meet up with one of the surviving Metroids. Yet the last thing you fight is one of the Metroids from the breeding station. An Omega Metroid to be precise. Doesn't look anything like an Omega Metroid, but who cares. Oh, and it's weak to ice. The Federation fucked up badly here. Oh, Adam wasn't the only one. That's somehow more disturbing. Samus wonders how people will view her actions, but as she reflects on one of Adam's statements, one of them will understand. One of them must. Though apparently the Federation troops were a rogue faction corrupted with greed and power according to the original Japanese script.
Nothing like that is really mentioned in the English version. It's just implied that it's the entire Federation. But past that...
Fusion is great. Yeah, it's not a traditional entry, but it's still a great game, especially for beginners. Hell, I started my Metroid journey with this game, and I was hooked with the linear structure, the gripping story, and later on, appreciating the character study for Samus Aran. And while I prefer a more open-ended map, the linearity helps it as a more confined adventure, which is probably why it's a fan favorite for speedrunning. And speaking of which, this is the first game where you get endings for both time and completion, and damn, these pictures are super cool. But damn, I wish we had the Japanese endings. These show events of Samus' past and how she became who she is, and shows a little more about her character as a growing child. Again, this game is a little more of a character study. But all that is an interesting segue to Metroid Zero Mission, as well as its supplementary manga. I do want to talk about this for a quick minute if you allow me. Now, aside from the Super Metroid Nintendo Power comic, no, it's not important and you shouldn't read it, this is the first time we actually learn of Samus' backstory, growing up with her blood family, being raised by the Chozo, her interaction with the Space Pirates, and her affiliation with the Federation. It's a great read with some really interesting characters. I love Samus' interactions with Old Bird and Grey Voice, learning about her teammates who are a little too comic relief-esque for my liking. Commander Kita is probably the only good part of the Federation, and thankfully the most respected, especially with the fall of the Chozo years later. And dear God, how come Adam is such a decent character, and yet he was such a hard-ass in Other M? That's just kinda disgusting. Speaking of which, Ridley is about as crude as he is violent, even taunting Samus by telling her he had to eat her colony to survive, even her mother who was trying to protect her. What a freaking bastard! You really want to see this guy get his ass kicked and then some. Throughout this entire scene, Samus is suffering from post-traumatic stress just from the sight of Ridley, and even after he leaves to investigate an explosion, Samus goes insane, suddenly enduring the suppressed anxiety from her past, and seeing the imprisoned Chozo comforting her is empowering, telling her to let everything out. Wow, Other M really f***ed this hard. Back then, I was admiring Other M for trying to retread these elements, even if they were clumsily handled, but no, it's even more evident that they just gave the manga the middle finger. I really do love this manga, and I'd highly recommend you look into the English translation. You'll find it easily. There's some things that don't really make too much sense, more so the last two chapters when it retreads the first Metroid. It makes sense for a Zero Mission supplement, but there are things they should have either removed or at least implemented into the remake. Like Grey Voice coming back to show Samus the Varia suit. It was a nice moment, if a little out of nowhere, but in Zero Mission, no, it's just a random item. I'd say if you want to read the manga and play Zero Mission, I'd rather you play the game first and then read the manga after finishing to get some details. But I mean, you should do both anyways, since this is not only a great read, but Zero Mission is a great game. There's not a lot to talk about. It's the first game, but with much better level design, more bosses to take care of that hold the items you never got in the original. I like that addition. Samus seems a little heavier than she was in Fusion, which makes things a little awkward when you play the games back to back, and some of the items are still a little odd. You seriously get the long being 5 minutes into the game, kinda makes it unnecessary. And you also get the power grip, which is something you had in Fusion from the start. So I don't see why you needed it as a power-up in the first place. You also have these unknown items you can't use until the end of the game, though I'm glad they exist just for the item theme alone. As weird as these decisions are, it doesn't detract the fact that it's the most definitive way to play the first game. It's easier for starters, it's fairly streamlined with some level design tweaks that allow for clever item hiding. And once you take out Mother Brain, which is still a pain in the ass, especially in hard mode, you're taken to the last third of the game where the space pirates take out her ship and she now has to infiltrate her base without her Varia suit, instead of having this dinky little shock pistol. Thankfully, there are some interesting hiding places, some of which are a little too easy. Good job, you're doing your part, idiot. And later on, getting to show the Chozo gods who you truly are, awakening the Varia suit alongside the 3 mystery items, and blasting the bastards to smithereens! Oh man, this is wonderful. And you can acquire the power bombs to truly get every item in Zebes. Oh god. If there's one thing I always hated about Zero Mission, it's 100%ing the game.
I mean, it isn't hard to get every item if you want to get them all.
Oh, shut up, you nincompoop. Some of these items are just straight up awful, like this maze you have to finish by doing some wacky acrobatics, and just above that room you have to use the speed booster to get one stupid missile. Oh, I hate some of these puzzles, and again, your reward for most of these are just standard missiles. Seriously, it's easier to get super missiles, E-tanks, and power bombs than these frickin' things. At least 100% leaves you with something interesting. Giving the final boss double health. That's something, I guess. Oh yeah, this is Mecha Ridley. I guess Ridley is not only a bastard, he's a narcissistic bastard. And you can also dodge it by crouching in the corner. That extended health bar is becoming less of a reward. Oh, and good luck if you're playing this on hard mode, even though you'll probably know the layout since it's unlocked by playing the game once. These bastards are going to kick your ass no matter what. And no, I'm not going to tell you how to cheese them, figure it out yourself. But yeah, Zero Mission is amazing. It just has some bad extra puzzles and a pretty awful hard mode.
Go grab this game as well as Metroid Fusion if you still have a Wii U. Or emulate it. Actually, yeah, just emulate it.
So you must ask, what's next? Well, Hiatus is next, that's what. Now, that's not to say there weren't plans for the franchise. Prime 2 was released on the same year as Zero Mission, with Prime Hunters and Prime 3 hitting the scene a couple of years later. As far as 2D Metroid was concerned, Sakamoto was having trouble with that. There was an issue of Game Informer that talked about a new Metroid game coming to the Nintendo DS, with IGN confirming the title as well as the official Nintendo magazine listing the title for 2006. However, there wasn't a lot of details, and almost nothing coming from Nintendo for the next few years, aside from a Prime 3 scan log.
Though Mike Wicken did confirm that it was a coincidence.
There was a demo at E3 2009 of a brand new Metroid game behind closed doors, though the Dread name wasn't in the demo itself. There's a lot we still don't know about Dread past that, and we may never know what it will entail. E3 2017 hits, and we got 2 bombshells at the show. Metroid Prime 4 was vaguely announced in Nintendo's conference, with Samus Returns, a remake of the second game, being revealed at the Treehouse. Now, I was a fan for a few years, so seeing 2 games being revealed in one day, let's just say I couldn't speak for the rest of the day. And the best part was, Samus Returns was coming out 3 months afterwards, so you knew I was anxious to play a brand new game for the first time. The first time I played it, I was having a blast. The new Aeon abilities allowed Samus to traverse SR388 with little trouble. The Metroids were much more exciting than the original game, and the new bosses were nothing to sneeze at either. Arachnus was a fun update to the original. The reoccurrence of the Juggernaut was tense and exciting, ending off with a wonderful test of your skills up to that point. And the final encounter with Ridley, well, out of nowhere back in 2017, nowadays is a brilliant connection to the mainline games as well as the Prime series, showing that Ridley was more than a simple enemy. He was a threat to Samus and the galaxy to an extent. And as much as I still stand by the fact that these were just amazing additions to the original, the fact that the game still copied the original's repetitive structure crept around this time. The Metroids are still kind of a joke once you know how to really take them out quickly. Even the Zeta and Omega Metroids were kind of boring this time. And the worst of it hits when you meet the baby Metroid. The scene is way more impactful this time, and when I read the manga months later, I realized that this scene was a parallel to the time when Samus' colony was destroyed, with the Metroids representing the colony, and this time, Samus representing Ridley. And again, I feel like the ending really hit that home. And you can feel all this with absolutely no dialogue. I still also stand by this game's willingness to keep a show-don't-tell style. But if you want to get everything, you need to wait until you get this thing so it can eat rocks. Lovely. A pace breaker if nothing else. Does getting everything make Ridley's health bigger too? Well, with how long the fight lasts, it actually might, but I'm not in the mood to look into that.
Also, and this has nothing to do with everything I've been talking about, but I did have this missile tank glitch me out of 100%. Sure, it was fixed when I restarted the game, but I'm docking points for that alone.
This may be the only game for the video I actively liked less looking at it for a third time, and honestly, I can't say it's not unwarranted. Maybe a playthrough of Fusion mode would change my mind. Oh, but wait. I can't, because it's only unlocked with one of the Samus Returns amiibo, and these amiibo cost just as much as a teeth cleaning. No thanks, I'll pass. However, if you collect all of these Chozo memories, you get a certain Easter egg. This made no sense back in 2017. But in 2021...
Oh, is it time to talk about it now? Is it time to talk about how much of a masterpiece this game is?
Where do we start? Well, I guess we start at the point where I was about to pass out. Okay, the E3 presentation happened when I was really tired, so that didn't really help much. Night shifts are fun. But at E3 2021, we got the announcement of a new 2D Metroid game, while Metroid Prime 4... And dude, the moment Samus dropped from the ceiling, I screamed. This is what Samus looked like. The white and blue looked really good. And a few seconds later, Metroid 5. The only thing that would make this reveal even greater is if they revealed those two words. This entire trailer... Oh, whoop, I spit. This entire trailer caused so much energy to release from me. I should have been in a coma until the game released. Those were the most painful 4 months I have ever freaking lived through. The only thing that kept me in check was when I played more Metroid before then. Mostly for this video, but also because I wanted to play Super Metroid a few more times. I avoided every other trailer at that point. I only knew of the E.M.M.I, I knew of this guy going on, that made me angry. Stop toying with me, Nintendo! And that was it. I wanted to go completely blind. I never do that with video games, guys, but this was different. This was Metroid 5. This was Metroid Dread. I wanted to go into this game with as fresh of a mind as possible. This could be the greatest game I've ever played. Let's just get into it. Okay, don't judge me, but the second I select the file... Oh, I felt something when that happened. And we get everything we need to know before hopping in. With a brief description of the Metroids and X-Parasites, we get a recap of the events of Fusion, and we learn of the E.M.M.I droids the Federation sent on planet ZDR, thanks to their random footage of an X. But after they disappeared, because of course they did, I guess they sent Samus out there because of her immunity. I'm a little confused that the story has nothing to do with the Federation, aside from the E.M.M.I. I wish there was a bit of back and forth with the Federation after blowing out the B.S.L. Even if it was a rogue faction, it just feels a little off. Whatever, we got to find the X and the missing E.M.M.I units, though Adam is adamant on not taking this bounty. And I suppose he was right, as Samus quickly meets up with a Chozo who wipes the floor with her, but for a particular reason he leaves her alone, just with her abilities taken away, because of course they are. And once we take control... Oh god, this is actually amazing. The architecture is brimming with Chozo sculptures and technology. Aside from connecting back with Adam thanks to these new speaker thingies, we have this even better melee counter that keeps the pace going as well as making you look frickin' badass. You can actually find items way easier thanks to this white border revealing hidden items. And then you meet one of the E.M.M.I, learning about how to counter it and learning how to take it down with this Omega Beam from the Brain Light creature. And with the E.M.M.I searching a new target instead, you'll have to take out each central unit and find a good spot to destroy the E.M.M.I. And it's not going to be as simple as the first one. You quickly find the arena for the second E.M.M.I, but you see it hanging from the ceiling, slowly chasing you through the E.M.M.I zone until it can't find you anymore. And at that point, once you return to the zones, you must do your best to get to another way out. Avoid them hearing your movements, and once you get to your first Aeon ability to Phantom Cloak, you can be a lot more careful in your pursuits, even best with a more resilient E.M.M.I. Just to bump up a bit for a moment. The purple E.M.M.I! This asshole not only has your precious wave beam, but it can also find you throughout the entire zone, and I hate it! Aside from that, though, the E.M.M.I's role in the game is surprisingly small from what they told us in the lead up to release. They are a great sense of tension, and I really do like them. Yeah, most of them. But they can be a bit repetitive, and thus the tension slowly forms into irritation. Now, if there's something to talk about with Dread, it's the boss fights. Mercury's team did a great job with the boss fights in Samus Returns, and Ridley was solid evidence that if they did another Metroid game, the bosses would potentially be a highlight, and damn it, they completely surpassed that expectation. I don't think there's a single boss I actively disliked. They kicked my ass a few times, but once I found out each attack pattern, it was smooth sailing from then on out. My favorite definitely being the fight with the Experiment, every attack testing your reflexes rather than your offensive abilities. And this is even evident with the Quick Kill, using the Shine Spark after its airflow attack, and the cutscene's even different depending on how you angle it. That's freaking amazing. There are a few bosses with Quick Kills actually, which leads me to the best reveal for me. Thankfully for me, I didn't see a single trailer after E3, because when I saw Kraid, I was screeching. He looks so grotesque, I love it! And then getting to his second phase, you can use the tried and true missile and charge beams, and countering his swipe for that awesome quick cam fight. It's so cool. But if you're curious enough, you can get Morph Bombs early, and if you learn the area layout, yeah, you can get into that Morph Bomb launcher and slam it to his stomach Metroid 2 style. It's gross, but damn is it not satisfying. I wish there was a different cutscene for that kind of death, but oh well, what can you do? The other great thing about Dread though is how much more you should get out of your old abilities. That new slide ability, which I'm surprised has not been a thing until now, gets a lot of use even once you get your Morph Ball, which holy shit, it felt like forever on my first playthrough getting to it. The speed booster gets so much of a boost, pardon the pun, with you being able to jump and bounce off walls to keep the speed going, along with the Shine Spark having the same properties as Fusion and Zero Mission, which you will want to understand if you want to go for everything. These puzzles are no joke, but trust me, they aren't as bad as Zero Mission, and they really are a great way to improve yourself and learn how to break the game. And Mercury's team truly wants you to break it. Alongside your old utility, you'll be able to find new toys to play with. I'm shocked that it took us this long to get Seeker Missiles, which they call Storm Missiles in this game. They eat up a lot of missiles, but damn, it works for both exploration and combat. These Chozo robots don't stand a chance. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. Put a pin on that. I will say the cross bombs and spin boosts are a little weird. The cross bomb sounds like a great evolution for Morph Bombs, but it's so situational, I don't really use them even for completion. I'll just stick to bomb jumping, thank you. And the spin boost is a double jump. And the space jump isn't far up, so it feels like a waste of an item. I guess it makes sense as a basic sense of progression. I suppose that was their mentality there. And of course the Phantom Cloak is helpful in the E.M.M.I zones, and the phase shift is really nice during those Chozo robots I talked about earlier. Should I talk about the story? Yeah, here's a spoiler tag if you haven't left yet. Once you find the fourth E.M.M.I blasting into this Chozo mural, it suddenly shuts down by another Chozo. Not only that, a Chozo from the same tribe as Samus, the Thoho tribe. The Chozo, named Quiet Robe, talks about his role in keeping the Metroids concealed at SR-388. But after the Metroids were evolving and becoming uncontrollable, they asked for the assistance of the Mockin tribe to take them out, but the leader, Ravenbeak, instead took onto him to keep them sealed as a bioweapon and killed the Thoho tribe aside from Quiet Robe to keep control of the Metroids. Furthermore, an X was able to sneak onto the Mockin army and wreak havoc, though thanks to his armor, he was able to contain them, and if something went sour, he would use them as weapons instead. Well, Samus eradicated the Metroids, leaving his plans into ruin. However, since Samus actually has Metroid DNA inside her, his new plan is to use the E.M.M.I to extract the DNA from her body, but she rests assured that she will deal with Ravenbeak, in the Chozo language no less, which is absolutely incredible. I smiled when that happened.
Now, there are people that are conflicted by this, the fact that this is the only time Samus actually talks in the entire game, and while I can see where they're coming from, like I said earlier, I always saw Samus as this silent bounty hunter who only talks when she absolutely needs to, so for me, this is completely fine.
However, there are times where she should have had a couple of lines. Not to say the body language isn't good enough. I am more than happy just letting the visuals do the talking. but there are a couple of times where she does converse with others, namely Adam in the beginning, not that it really meant anything if she did, and at the end where she meets Ravenbeak for the final showdown. And first of all, I love how he's foreshadowed in the game. Adam tells you that you have no chance in taking them down, even calling your own abilities inadequate. This may have been a retread of Fusion, however, there's one small, completely missable detail that might help you connect the dots. Ever since the first communication station, one thing happens that immediately gives you a red flag. Adam calls you Samus, not Lady. You weren't given orders from Adam, but from Ravenbeak himself. This alone shows the intelligence and deceitfulness of our antagonist, even throwing away another crucial detail, calling you his daughter since he was the one that gave you Chozo DNA. And I doubt this is true, not the least of which is that it was a crucial fact that it was Grey Voice that donated the DNA to help her survive the harsh atmosphere of Zebes. And while you may think that Ravenbeak may have helped donate his DNA as well, Samus' own body language shows as much that this is probably a false claim, considering, he kind of manipulated you. Although I can't say that's entirely foolproof, and it may be a retcon for all we know. Grey Voice doesn't get a single name drop in any of the games. Even Other M kind of throws away the idea of the Chozo being Samus' surrogate family. Nevertheless, his persuasion fails to convert Samus into the dark side, and they duel it out in the most epic boss fight in any goddamn video game. This guy will slash at you if you get too close, he'll shoot out dark matter, and later on a miniature sun to shoot solar rays. He'll even destroy you with the Aeon abilities from Samus Returns. The lightning armor, beam burst, and time shift are used in the first and second phases. That was a crazy small detail that makes absolute perfect sense. Dude, once you take out one of his wings, he gets so cocky that he even rips off his other wing just to show he means business. And he really starts showing no mercy, right up until he repeats the same tactic from the beginning, telling Samus that even if she won't comply, she will still be cloned as the ultimate weapon, not unlike the SAX, just in Metroid form. And with Samus' final breath, she lets herself go apeshit and drain Ravenbeak and his ship of their power. I didn't even know Metroids can even do that, but I guess Samus says screw the rules, she has immunity, bitch. You may have released all the X into the wild, but I'll annihilate all of them, you along with them. And holy shit, look at this Metroid suit! Okay, yeah, it admittedly took a bit for me to get used to the design, but it's a fucking Metroid suit! This is the sickest thing I've ever seen, and best of all, one of the X actually absorbs itself into Ravenbeak thanks to being exposed, combining into an Eldritch Abomination with Kraid, oh god. But with the return of the Hyper Beam, you not only take out Ravenbeak for good, you also completely evaporate the X. What a badass moment. And of course there's a goddamn self-destruct sequence, but goddamn you destroy the planet with the Metroid suit. This is awesome as hell. Destroy the X. Destroy the support beams. I just realized I could have Shine Spark to the top, but we got to the ship just in...
Drain the ship of its energy.
Well, that's how at the moment.
Wait a second. Wait a second, what? What in the hell just happened?
Did Quiet Robe completely negate the X's control to help Samus escape? Do Chozo have that power to begin with? Or was it the fact that Quiet Robe's memories completely overrode the X's control? Oh shit, maybe that was why the scientists in Fusion wanted to destroy the ship, because he was fighting the X from inside him in order to eliminate the X themselves. Oh my god, everything is falling into place. This game is amazing. I loved my first playthrough to death, but it didn't quite hit the same beats as Super Metroid and Zero Mission for me. Then I played the game again in hard mode, learning about the secrets and sequence breaking. The third time, I take my time to learn these sequence breaking tips, and every time I played it, I learned just how phenomenal this game is in its storytelling as well as its lore crafting. It was the final piece to a crucial puzzle that we never even knew existed in the first place. And no, I don't mean the Tetris 99 theme, but damn it, you know this will be my theme until the day the system dies. Oh, and it's not even the story. The level design is top notch. You will most likely never get lost because every landmark is set in near perfect areas as long as you look at the map every once in a while. I seriously can't say more than that. This may be the last of the Metroid saga, but god damn it, I want to know more! I still have questions about the Chozo. Are there any other tribes that exist? Are there other Chozo that know Samus? What about the Federation? They have to know more about the Thoho and Makan tribes, maybe other tribes. Are there other types of Metroid if that is true? Is this the last of the X? Is there another threat the Metroids were made to eliminate? What other planets have the Chozo inhabited? I'm about to pass out from excitement, and my god, my throat is freaking tired.
And that is it. That is the end of the Metroid timeline, at least for right now. And wow, what a way to end. This game is phenomenal. There is almost nothing wrong with it. It just goes from strength to strength to strength to speed boost after strength. Yes, the soundtrack isn't as memorable as the previous games, and there were a few times where I did get a little lost, but honestly, those are just small nitpicks in my opinion to what is otherwise a masterpiece of a game. I don't know if I consider this just as good as Super Metroid or whatever, but honestly, I don't care. Metroid Dread is just absolutely phenomenal. This game is great, and I'm glad that this game is actually selling really well. This is becoming the greatest game in terms of sales. I'm flubbing this hard really badly. And I hope the sales really tells Nintendo that we really want more of these games. I just love this franchise, and I know a lot of people do too. I know a lot of people would actually love this franchise if they actually gave it a shot. You know, Super Metroid's on the Nintendo Online thing, as well as the original, who really gives a shit. But honestly, play Super Metroid, play Metroid Dread. There is also Fusion and Zero Mission on the Wii U if you really have one, if you really care that much. And really, this franchise just means a lot to me, man. And let this just be a great sign for this franchise. There is one downside, though. One thing that makes the existence of this game absolutely infuriating. Now that Metroid Dread is finally out, now we have to start the agonizing wait for Metroid 6.